The day is finally here. It's draft day 2012. What will the Jazz do? What's the day likely to be? And what's the latest rumors? It'll be irrelevant in about an hour. It's all next on Tip Off. Boom, 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 boom. It's 8:19. Boom, 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 boom. At 8:50, this may all not matter. Boom, 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 boom. At 10, it certainly won't. Boom, boom, boom. And at 4 o'clock by draft party, who knows what might happen. But what I do know is the Giants swept the Dodgers. Boom, 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 boom. Welcome to Tip Off on Draft Day. Vocal today at noon. Get your questions in now. I've tweeted that out a few times, so hope to have you join us for that. We also will. I gave a nice podcast with Spence Checkich yesterday. I had a good time doing that, so that's available for you. Hopefully you're getting enough information. You feel like this has been covered. I have not done as many draft videos as usual. I hope that hasn't been discouraging, but if you look at the bags under my eyes, you can also tell I haven't slept very much. So just time. There's a lot of stuff out there, and without the urgency of who we're going to pick, it makes it a little harder to do some of those things. Let me just take you through where we are. From every report I'm hearing, the Jazz are, as would expected, is making the attempt to get into the first round. We, I think, have broken down quite well what it would take for them. For you who have not heard this, I mean, you're offering next year's pick, which I think they would have to do at the conclusion. Maybe agree to it beforehand, but the deal couldn't be done until the conclusion because they have to take this year's pick because they have traded. They traded this year, so there's a rule what they can't do with next year's. You can't trade your first round pick 2 years in a row. Jazz could trade the Warriors pick. The other aspect of really what they have to offer is any of the four youngs. I think they're pretty reluctant to do that unless the right deal, someone they really, really like. And then it would be trading Millsap, Jefferson, or Harris, who have 1 year left on a deal. And in all of those cases, I think you have to bring back some sort of significant money and see whether or not that plays out for you, similar to the way Ben Gordon was traded for Corey Maggette. They also got a draft pick for that, though. I think that's somewhat the way the market is for Jefferson or Harris at this point. I'm not sure that those deals are exactly parallel, but I think that's the ballpark for them. And I think you have to find a team that really believes Harris or Jefferson is going to make them win right now. And most of those teams don't have great draft picks, so you're not playing for an awful lot. We will see how this plays out, but from the Jazz standpoint, that's what they have to offer. As I think we've kind of documented out, none of those things seem to be able to move the meter. You have to have the best deal that anyone is offering, and I don't think the Jazz have that right now. And as much as they're making efforts to get in, it does not sound as though they're going to be able to, at least from reports I have as of 8/22. The other thing, talking to people around the league yesterday and late into the night, is that today everyone is expecting today to be crazy active in deals. Actually, more often than not, I kind of get told, it's not as much as going to happen. I'm getting the opposite right now, that crazy active in deals. And from a Jazz standpoint, what I think they're trying to do is position themselves if that happens. If the Dwight Howard deal goes, if the Gasol deal goes, can they get in on the backside? Can they get some things going from different angles on that? So we'll keep an eye on that. That's just impossible to tell, and I think that of what that would be, and that's difficult because you're somewhat reliant on other people to be able to get your deals done. But I think that's the reality of where the Jazz are right now. Is I'm not sure the Jazz have the piece to dictate the deal themselves to get something done. Okay, healthcare bill just came across the wire, and it's constitutional. It's big news today. All right, let me go through talking to some people what they think is going to happen today, and we'll try to. Davis is going to go 1. The Bobcats, according to numerous reports, David Aldridge reported this morning they have about 5 legitimate offers. I think that the expectation is the Bobcats are going to move that pick. And then it's Beal or Robinson going to. Uh, if it's Beal, then at 3, Washington may not take Robinson, and he could slide all the way. Cleveland at 4 probably takes him, though Tristan Thompson is somewhat similar. So we'll see how that plays, but the expectation, and this is where this thing gets kind of wacky. I mean, talking to people and agents who usually know where their players are going to go, and even like second round players, they usually can say, okay, my guy's going right here. They're not within 10 or 12 picks right now, and in the first round, they're not within 3 or 4 picks of being certain, which is very different than the way it usually is. So I think Anthony Davis is the one. Robinson, let's assume for a second the Bobcats take it, but I think that's a bad assumption. Nobody really expects the Bobcats to take that pick. And I think if there's a trade, the feeling is, as Spence talked about on our podcast, that Beal is the one who's going to end up going to. Then the Wizards, who have just traded for Okafor as well as have Nene, are on the board with Robinson as the top prospect. At that point, they would like a shooting guard. I think Barnes could end up flying into 3 at that point, and suddenly Beal and suddenly Robinson's on the board at 4 for Cleveland, who just got Tristan Thompson last year, and I'm not sure that. I mean, I think they could probably work them both, but they do supposedly like Kid Gilchrist as a possibility. But just for the sake of some sense of order, let's say they would go Robinson because he's the best player. Then you have the Kings at 5, and people aren't sure what's going to happen with that pick. 1, the Kings have been shopping it a lot. 2, the Kings have always been a little bit out of the natural realm of what they are likely to pick, and they have this kind of interesting mix of players that are good but maybe not good enough. Isaiah Thomas, Marcus Thornton, Tyreek Evans, DeMarcus Cousins. What is it that they're actually looking to get done? They do need someone to play with Cousins, and I don't know who that is. I don't know if that's, and I don't know how the Jazz get involved there, but every time I hear rumors, Chad Ford had it that the Jazz are tied. I do think that's the spot, and I don't know how that would play out. But Drummond is being talked about there. He's without question the biggest risk in the entire draft. Either Kid Gilchrist or Drummond probably goes 5, which does put Lillard at 6 to the Portland Trailblazers. The wild card that is happening right now, though, with all of this is Dion Waiters. And if we go back to this scenario where I just talked about where Davis goes 1, there's a trade, Beal goes 2, Barnes goes 3, Waiters could go 4 to Cleveland. Now Robinson is on the board 5 for the Kings, and they probably couldn't be more ecstatic in that sense. Dion Waiters is interesting. One scout says to me he's a selfish kid. He's not really a point guard. He's a shooting guard. He's a selfish kid. And yet another one will tell me that they picked 2 All-Stars last night for me along with Anthony Davis, they picked Barnes and Waiters. So I think he is rocketing up the board as a possibility at 4 or 5, and it's legitimate. The Syracuse kid, he had some problems there, but he's being talked about. And if suddenly what gets very interesting, if that takes place, Beal goes 2, Barnes goes 3, Waiters goes 4, 5 is Robinson. I think Portland still takes Lillard, but then Lillard could suddenly be the victim of that if Kid Gilchrist still on the board. No one's sure what the Warriors are going to do at 7. In fact, one person said to me, I have no idea what the Warriors are doing, but they don't either. So I think that tells you where they stand. And the Warriors somewhat block this whole thing of how it's going to play out because no one's sure what they're going to do. At 9, Detroit is going to go big. They're either taking Henson or Drummond. If Drummond's on the board, they flew to New York yesterday to see how that plays. 10 is New Orleans, and that gets into the possibility of an Austin Rivers. And again, we're not quite sure who could be sliding. There's a chance if Lillard doesn't go 6, he would probably go 8 to Toronto. I think that's his backstop. But if you run it, I always love that kind of looking at a draft, each player's backstop. Like, where's the last spot they could go? I think the last spot for Lillard is 10 there. So the Kings at 5 are a huge wild card, and the Warriors at 7 are there. The comment out of Neil O'Shea, the GM of the Portland Trailblazers, is we can't net back enough to justify our moves right now. That's the perfect comment to make 24 hours before the draft, but it does sound at this point as though Portland is looking to hold on to both of those picks. But again, everyone I talk to, the activity level is expected to be enormous. And if you think about it, 2 probably is expected to be dealt by the Bobcats. 5 in Sacramento, I think, in all likelihood, is expected to be dealt. So that can just blow up everything, and suddenly deals that were dead can resurface in a span of 5 minutes, which will make this definitely a nutty, nutty draft. To keep an eye on. Should be a lot of fun. I will be at the draft party, just hanging out, probably following it closely on Twitter. So feel free to come chill and hang out. I may actually just go to my broadcast site and let you guys all just come up there. The word is Houston still heavily involved, and that Houston may be looking at Drummond. There's their guy they believe in of what he can do to the game defensively. Drummond to me is the biggest risk on this entire board. Talking to some scouts, they have the feeling that that this is a high level rotational players in this draft. And that there are a lot of them. That this is a draft that they're very confident will have more players, than I kind of talked to them about the high level drafts have had 27, 28 players, 20 of the 30 first round picks, and they kind of think this is a draft which will have more than that. Now, that's obviously the optimism of the day, but that is the feeling. Trade rumors are still going nuts. Lamar Odom has to really be dealt by Friday. In all likelihood, I think he probably gets moved today. They have to figure out what they're going to do with that as their quest for Darren Williams continues in Dallas. Pau Gasol is obviously being shopped. Atlanta, when Rick Sund was the general manager, wanted to do a Josh Smith for Pau Gasol. The latest rumor is a Zach Randolph for Pau Gasol. We'll see whether or not that comes about. Rudy Gay, according to people out of Memphis, is not available. Obviously, the most interesting rumor of the day is the idea of the Thunder trying to get to 2 with James Harden. If Charlotte believed they could re-sign Harden and he would be the piece for their future, I think I would make that trade. I think I would trade the number 2 pick if I was Charlotte for James Harden. He was a number 3 pick, I think, maybe 4 or 5, but he's bona fide. He's an Olympic level player, and I think that's pretty legitimate. If they're really offering that, if I'm Charlotte, I probably would take that. Kyle Lowry is expected to be moved today. He expects to be moved as well. So there's the major piece of Houston who keeps trying to move Lowry. At some point, they're pretty far down the road on that. I think they have to move him. And then there's these intriguing prospects that it will be interesting. I like both the Terrence kids, Terrence Jones out of Kentucky, Terrence Ross out of Washington. I like both the Lamb kids. Actually, I screwed it up on Sulia yesterday. Nixing. I like Doron Lamb, the second-round draft pick out of Kentucky, and then Jeremy Lamb, a lot of people really like out of Connecticut as well. I think I like both those guys. The intriguing guys are Austin Rivers and Tony Wroten. I got to tell you what, if I was a GM in the 20s, I'm taking Wroten. His athleticism is just crazy. I'm going to try to get a video up at some point today between the vocal chat at noon and heading down to the draft video for you. So keep an eye on that for the last second. His athleticism is just crazy. And Austin Rivers is getting criticized for a lot of things right now to the point where Coach K called Chad Ford to kind of say he's all right. People I talked to last night said Rivers would not probably be one that his teammates would like playing with very much. We'll see whether he can evolve in that, but it sounds as though that was a little bit of an issue at Duke. His competitiveness is such that people didn't really like playing with him. That's kind of the latest I have. It's all going to change. I think from a Jazz standpoint, I learned a bunch of stuff last night, and I would tell you that I think the most important thing I learned, and I'll learn more about it today, and so for those of you that stuck through 14 minutes of this little Jazz nugget, is that there is a real chance the Jazz will play Alec Burks as the point guard for the majority of Summer League in Orlando. And that may be the biggest news of the Jazz day right there. And I think that is probably, if for those of you stuck through the whole thing, the news note on the Jazz that's most important, that Alec Burks, they've always thought he could play some one. They didn't want to force it on him last year, and they will, during Summer League in Orlando, play Burks a good deal at the one to see what he can do. Um, and we'll keep an eye on that. The other note I have for you, the Jazz are, if their best player on the board is a foreign big, I think that there's a chance they would go with the route of leaving him overseas and trying to bring him back in, or if it's a position where they don't think he could help immediately. The Jazz are willing to draft a foreign player and leave him overseas for a year or two before they add him as an asset later. Ante Tomic is another one they've done with that. Tomic has not been re-signed by Real Madrid, which is a little discouraging. That's like not being re-signed by the New York Yankees or the LA Lakers. I mean, that's the most team that has the most money without a salary cap, and for them to not re-sign him is a little discouraging about what they think of his play and where he is development-wise. The Jazz will investigate what's going on with that, but sometimes that gets into a little bit of highway robbery with the European agents are probably more crooked than the American agents, and what they'll do is, even though he's a free agent right now, they'll go sign him with another team. Then the Jazz have to pay $500,000 to that team just to have the rights to bring him over, even though they have the draft rights for him, which makes him, makes it, you really got to believe that he's going to be worth it if you're going to do that. And this is a guy that hasn't developed particularly well recently. All right, that is the latest. Vocal at noon would probably be the next time I'll talk to you, and then at probably sometime on 1280 The Zone, as well as on Twitter. So follow me at Locked On Sports. You probably already are. Have a good one. I look good, don't I? Ooh, am I tired.